The Italian poet Petrarch wrote about his ascent of Mont Ventoux on the 26th of April 1336 in a well-known letter published as one of his Epistolae familiars. In this letter, written around 1350, Petrarch claimed to be the first person since antiquity to have climbed a mountain for the view. Although the historical accuracy of his account has been questioned by modern scholars, it is often cited in discussions of the new spirit of the Renaissance. Contents: Petrarch's letter is addressed to his former confessor, Diniz di Borgo San Sepolcro. It says he ascended the mountain with his brother Gherardo and 2 servants, exactly 10 years after they had left Bologna. They began at the village of Malorcine at the foot of the mountain. On the way up they met an old shepherd, who said he had climbed the mountain some 50 years before, finding only rocks and brambles, and that no one else had done it before or since. The brothers continued, Gherardo continuing up the ridge they were following, Petrarch ever trying for an easier, if longer, path. At the top, they found a peak called Filiolus, Little Sun. Petrarch reflected on the past 10 years, and the waste of his earthly love for Laura. They looked out from here, seeing the Rhone and the Cevennes, but not the Pyrenees. At this point, Petrarch sat down and opened his Augustan, and immediately came upon people moved to wonder by mountain peaks, by vast waves of the sea, by broad waterfalls on rivers, by the all-embracing extent of the ocean, by the revolutions of the stars. But in themselves they are uninterested. Petrarch fell silent on this trip down, reflecting on the vanity of human wishes and the nobility of uncorrupted human thought. When they arrived back in the village in the middle of the night, Petrarch wrote this letter hastily and extemporaneously, or so he says. Historic doubts. It is often claimed that Petrarch was the first to climb Mont Ventoux, although he did not suggest so himself. The mountain was likely already climbed in prehistoric times, and there is even a slightly older written account of an ascent by Jean Burdin, who on his way to the papal court in Avignon before the year 1334 climbed Mount Ventoux in order to make some meteorological observations. It further seems implausible that Petrarch sat down and wrote the 6,000 words we have, in elegant Latin with correct quotations from the classical poets, before dinner after an 18-hour hike up and down a mountain. In fact, whether Petrarch himself climbed the mountain has been doubted by modern scholars, according to Pierre Cursel and Giuseppe Belanovich. The letter is essentially a fiction written almost 15 years after its supposed date, and almost a decade after the death of its addressee, Francesco Diniz da Borgo San Sepolcro. Lyle Asher argued, indeed, that the ascent of the mountain was a figurative account of writing the letter itself. Modern reception. Jacob Burckhardt, in The Civilization of the Renaissance in Italy, declared Petrarch a truly modern man, because of the significance of nature for his receptive spirit, even if he did not yet have the skill to describe nature. Petrarch's implication that he was the first to climb mountains for pleasure, and Burckhardt's insistence on Petrarch's sensitivity to nature have been often repeated since. There are also numerous references to Petrarch as an alpinist, although Mont Ventoux is not a hard climb, and is not usually considered part of the Alps. This implicit claim of Petrarch and Burckhardt, that Petrarch was the first to climb a mountain for pleasure since antiquity, was disproven by Lynn Thorndike in 1943. The Legitimacy of the Modern Age by Hans Blumenberg describes Petrarch's ascent of Ventoux as one of the great moments that oscillate indecisively between the epochs, namely between the medieval period and modernity. He also uses it to illustrate his theory of intellectual history. The description of the ascent of Mont Ventoux exemplifies graphically what is meant by the reality of history as the reoccupation of formal systems of positions. James Hillman, in Revisioning Psychology, uses the story of Petrarch's ascent to illustrate his argument that the outer world of nature is mirrored by an equally vast inner world of images. Both worlds exist apart from the human being. The outer world may have motivated Petrarch to climb Mont Ventoux, but the inner world is what he discovered when he reached the top, and read the passage from Augustine's Confessions.